It's up to you.
I think since it's 5:42, we will call this meeting of the West Fargo Public Library Board of Directors to order. We'll start with the introduction of guests, and Carissa, why don't you take the lead on that?
So tonight we have with us Tina Fisk, City Administrator for the City of West Fargo.
Hello.
Okay, we'll move to the approval of the agenda. Are there any corrections to the consent agenda? Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
I'll make the motion to do.
Okay, so it sounds like Eric made a motion.
Second.
Yep. I'm going to read what the consent agenda is for posterity. The consent agenda includes approval of the minutes of March 12th, 2020, and approval of the financial report and bills. Is there any discussion? All those in favor of approving the consent agenda, please say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. And I see that Larry was able to vote aye in approval as well. Moving on to the regular agenda, we'll start with the discussion of financial overview in library's current finances, led by Tina Fisk.
Hello, Carissa had spoke with me. I'll shut this off the normal way. Chris and I were talking, and she was working with Jim as well, and I said that I would provide a history of what happened with the mill levy for the library. The mill levy for the library has been dropping since, let me see here. We started dropping it in 2018. What happened was between the 2016, 17, actually it was actual 2017 budget, it was estimated that expenses would be about 1.3 million, and they came in at 992. And so that added over $300,000 to the reserve fund, which brought the reserve funds up to $942,000 approximately. The issue with that wasn't, we found that it was chronically, okay, let me just be honest. When we asked the director at the time why the reserve fund was going up and up and up and up, and the expenses weren't being managed and reduced based on historical numbers, she said she was trying to build up a reserve fund for a building. And at that time, the commission was at a point where they had made the decision that even though we were adding additional expenditures in other areas, the decision was made that they did not want to increase mills. And so since there was this abundance in the reserve fund that technically should not have been built up for trying to build a library, it was determined at the time that we would take mills away from that and have them use the reserve funds to cover that deficit. So that's why if you look from, it went up again in 18, and then it was the 19 budget where the expenses were estimated to be 1.37 million, and there was only $909,000 in levy and actual $965 in total revenue, which brought down your reserve fund.
Can I interrupt you?
Yep.
I'm just wondering, you can, and maybe you can't, but is this something that we can share the screen on, or should we? Does everybody have this information in front of them?
Might be able to.
Yes, I will do that.
Just to make sure that we all understand.
Can people see that?
Mm-hmm. Okay. So if you look historically, you could see on the reserve fund balance that it went up in 17, up in 18, and then dropped in 19. And the plan in 19 was to the reserves were supposed to help fund some of that cost. And that's when your mills went down from we started in 17, they went from 9.29 in 17 to 7.28 in 18, but there was still reserve money. And then the next year it got dropped to 5.49 to drop that reserve fund balance. And that's when it caught up to it dropped down to $550,000. We gave a mill back for 20, and we realized that it's still not up where you would like it to be. That is kind of, the history was that the reserve fund balance was getting large, and the reasoning for having the huge balance wasn't fiscally responsible, so we wanted it to go down. Now, in all logic sense, you need to have a reserve for expenditures. You need to have anywhere between 3 to 9 months. It depends on how you do it. I usually hear 3 to 6. I would say 6 would be the least you'd want to have. So if you look at your expenses of being 1.4 million, you need around $700,000. You need to build that back up to about $700,000. It's not bad where it's at right now, but you wouldn't want that to continue to drop. And I know Carissa had concerns with the fact that the 2020 budget is underfunded by revenues from the city still, even though it only went up 1 mil, but that can only do so much, that it was going to eat into the balance of your reserve and end up with nothing. And for 2021 budget. And so my suggestion to her and to you is to do the most fiscally responsible budget you can do. The needs that you have, put those in there. Staffing, whatever. I mean, just do a really strong budget. And then Jim Larson and I will sit down with Carissa and go through where it all lands and how we would fund. Any questions? I made that nice and complicated.
Tina, this is Jody. What is the most mills possible that could be allocated to the library?
I knew you were going to ask that, and I wish I knew the answer. I think it's like 9.7, because you got really, really close in 2013. I think it's around the 9.7, 9.75. I have to look that up, and I don't have my budget with me.
For some reason, I was thinking it was 10, but.
Yeah, I have
I think you're right, Tina, that it's 9 point something. Yeah.
It's close to 10, but it's voted on by the people, so I have to pull that out and find it.
And you answered my other question I was going to ask. What is the target reserve? So it's not a good position to have a deficit there, and also a deficit in operating.
Yep.
So in your opinion, if Carissa was to come to you with a plan, what could be done? Like, yeah, I guess, could you just explain to us what the options would be?
The options would be that we would look at seeing with the city. We've committed to where we're going to try and only go up 2 mills this year if possible. And so right now we're looking at, Jim's original hope was go up another $0.5 mil for the library, but that would only give you like another $100,000. I don't think that's going to be enough. And so we would have to look at alteration of the number of mills that you receive, or if there would be a transfer from a different revenue source that we could put into the library to help you fund. Either that, or it would have to be, okay, this is your deficit. What services are going to have to be cut in order to make this work? And then that's a decision that goes in front of your board and the commission saying, okay, if this is all you're going to give us, these are the things that people are going to lose, because we can't do it all with this little bit of money. So, I mean, there'll be a number of different things that we can talk through, and then Carissa can bring them back to the full board. And I just think it's really important to talk through all areas of it, especially now with this COVID stuff, we don't know if our revenues from taxes are going to drop, if people aren't going to be able to pay. We have no idea. But we do want to just sit down and have a realistic approach to the budget this year with your director.
You know, one of the things I would throw in there too is that we need some really good messaging about it when the city goes through the budget process.
Yes.
Because it's going to look like the library is dramatically increased. You know, on people's tax statements, it's going to look like the library dramatically increased their budget, because if we go from 6.5 mils to 7.5 mils.
Yep. I
In
agree.
reality, that still might mean the library had a flat budget year over year, but it's going to look that way. And so we really need to message it well that over the last few years, the library's mills were actually less than what the operating costs of the library were. That was intentionally done, and you know, now we're just putting that back. So it's not like we're increasing. We gave people a break for a few years to keep their taxes low, but now we're putting it back where it needs to be.
I totally agree with you, Eric, on the messaging, and I know you and I talked a little bit about that. I want to concentrate this year more on total expenditures, and then reflect that and say, yes, the mills are going up, but this is why, even though their expenditures didn't increase equivalently to that, and just give that message that it was being taken from over the last few years. I totally agree.
Well, and part of the messaging can also be what has been the percent of maximum that they've been historically. You know, historically it has been 100%, but recently it's not been you know, the percent of max has been much lower. And so that's going to change over time, but as Eric pointed out, messaging is really important, but that can be a part of the message.
Yep, to say your mill's max was 975 voted on by the people, but at this point you're at like 6.2 or whatever it is. Yep. Okay, any other questions?
Yep, does anybody have any further questions?
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Tina. Thanks for joining us and explaining everything.
I'll wait on unless something comes in case.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to an agenda item, which is review the proposal from Signature Design for library office remodeling.
Can everybody see my screen again? Yep, okay. So I've spoke at past board meetings about doing some reshuffling around of staff offices, and that would require some light remodeling in the library. So I'm at a point now where I'm ready to bring the proposal to the library board. So tonight I'll be seeking approval to contract with Signature Design Home and Remodel, which the proposal was included in your board packet. So I'm seeking to contract with them to provide remodeling services of 2 offices on the upper level of the library. And those 2 offices are the ones on the map that I provided you that have the text in blue that outlines what's going to happen in each of those rooms. So I started by reaching out to contractors myself, and then I got guidance from City Buildings and Grounds about the plans and the proposals. So I'll summarize briefly what the plan is for what would move where. So there are 2 goals of the project, and one is to get most of our staff officing in the same area. Right now, my office is on a different level of the library on the 1st floor, and we have a staff break room that isn't really a functional staff break room also on the 1st level of the library. So I'm looking to move those items up to the upper level of the library to be with the rest of the staff. And then the other piece of this project that's important is, you see the room that's labeled 310 that says technical services. So technical services is the department that oversees all the receiving of items all the way up until they're shelf ready and ready for the customer. So that department needs more functional workspace, and right now we've got a lot of cubicles in that office, and so the staff who are in that department do need to office in there, but we'd like to free it up and make it a little more functional and move a couple of staff that are not in that department out of that office and into the office that's labeled 313 that says homework on it. So the folks that would move into that office would be any librarians if those positions are approved in 2021. Our program assistants who currently office in the room that's labeled 304 that has all staff break room in red, and then our communications specialist would move in there. And that room and the room across the hallway from it, where that would be my office and our office coordinator's office, were both being used for storage and some programming activities, and so they're both in really desperate need of carpeting and painting. And then in the office that's labeled 312, that's where we'd like to put up a wall and divide it into two offices. So the main goals, like I said, are to make some more functional workflows and to get everybody in closer proximity, so we can all work better together. And this project really can't wait another year for those reasons, because we really need to find ways to work more efficiently together. So I started the process of obtaining approval from the schools, and that's moving along, and I'm gonna meet with, if this is approved by you all tonight, I'll meet with Levi Bachmeyer, the business manager for the West Fargo School District next week, and per our lease, the schools will have to provide something in writing saying that they approve of the project. So I've got that underway. So as far as funding goes,
This is Alana. I have a question. Is
Yep,
anybody else
Alana, I think you're muted.
We're all waiting anxiously to hear your question.
I'll bet it was a really good question too.
Should I'll keep going, and then if you can jump in, Alana, if you get it working again. Okay.
I'm back on, but
okay.
We now have two meetings going on in our house. So Jody, you may have to take over. I don't know if my internet can handle all of this excitement at one time.
Okay, I'll continue, and if you want to jump in, Alana, that's perfectly fine. So myself and the library service managers did a budget analysis, and in doing so, we decided that we'd like to repurpose some funds that we were going to use for some new furniture and equipment to fund $10,000 of the project. And then the remaining costs will be covered by some surplus funds resulting from position vacancies this year. So this year, we'll have had several position vacancies, one being adult services for a while that wasn't filled, and now we have an office coordinator position that will be unfilled for a good chunk of the year. So as a result of that, we're going to have some surplus and some personnel lines. So as a one-time expenditure, it should be able to cover the rest of the project. So to summarize again, I'm seeking your approval to contract with Signature Design Home and Remodeling for 2 office spaces in the library for a total of $14,280. And then what'll happen is, because this wasn't a planned expense, I'll ask the finance department to amend the budget lines that need to be amended and increase the proper line in the budget where the project should be expended from. So if anybody has any questions, I'm
This is
happy to take
Alana.
them.
I see
Yeah.
that Larry made a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Eric. Any discussion? Hearing none, we will vote on the motion to approve the contract with Signature Design. All those in favor say aye.
I
Both same sign. Okay, motion approved. Moving on to the director's report.
So I want to spend most of the director's report tonight filling you guys in on the work that we have been doing since the building has been closed for the virus outbreak. Before I start, I just want to say right up front that our team has been showcasing how incredibly talented and adaptable they are, and the work that they've been doing despite everything that's going on has really been excellent. And right now, the library's role is really to keep people learning and growing and connected socially and allow people to have a sense of normalcy through everything that's happening. And the team has done exactly that, and it's been fantastic. So I'm excited to share some of it with you. So on March 23rd, we launched a series that we're calling West Fargo Public Library at Home. So it's an initiative that covers our virtual programming and our services that we're offering in new formats. And we're issuing most of our programs on Facebook and YouTube. I also want to point out that you can now find us on Nextdoor. I don't know, are any of y'all familiar with Nextdoor? So our communications specialist, Ellen, when we moved our set of programming to a virtual format, she got us on Nextdoor, and it's a really good tool because it reaches West Fargo residents really directly, because you have to authenticate your account by actually being a West Fargo resident. So you can find us on Nextdoor as well. And our YouTube channel is also new. We never had a YouTube channel until a couple weeks ago. So I just wanted to point that out. So one set of programming that we moved to a virtual format are our weekly story times. So in the library every week we have Monday baby story time, and we have a Wednesday preschool story time. So we took those programs and we moved them to our Facebook and our YouTube channels. So baby story time is 10:30 a.m. Mondays on Facebook, and preschool story time Wednesdays 10:30 a.m. on Facebook, and they're led by our youth program assistant Brittany. So that's Brittany on the screen. And right after story time, we are also providing a craft, which is something that we always do in the library as well. So that comes out right after preschool story time. And this set of programming has been so cool to see the feedback, because in this particular case, we're seeing a lot of new people, but we're seeing a lot of familiar faces that we also see in the library every single week. And I think that this is a great example of what I was talking about before with that sort of sense of normalcy for folks. I just think about how for so many kids, their world is just flipped upside down right now. And that's a really hard thing. And how great is it that you can see a familiar face that you might be used to seeing in the library in this new format, but you can still see them every week, and how good that is for them emotionally during a really turbulent and confusing time. So we've had excellent feedback for our story times. Another youth program that we're doing that's been really fun is we're issuing a weekly STEM challenge. So our youth services manager, Lauren, is producing the content for the weekly STEM challenge. And what it is every Friday morning she releases a new challenge. People watch the video and then they post photos of their creations or their response to the challenge in the comments, or they can send them to us on Facebook Messenger. So it's for kids and families. And then we do a drawing at the end of the week, and whoever wins gets a gift card to a local business. So last week we had paper airplanes. This week we have marble roller coasters. We had a lot of awesome prototypes from this program last week, and people had a lot of fun with it. So it was great to see. On the adult programming side of things, our new adult services manager, Kirsten, decided that a good response to things that are happening right now would be to start a vlog and so every Tuesday she releases a new episode, and the whole idea is that there's so much information coming at people right now with everything that's going on in the world. So one thing that people need is to just kind of cut through the noise to a certain extent. And so what she does in the vlog is she covers different topics and she gives people tips and recommends library resources and other resources that might be useful. So she's done one on career development and cooking and a bunch of different topics. And so the idea is to keep people focused on being well and achieving their goals, despite everything that's going on with the virus outbreak. Another program that we flipped to an online format is a book club. So Kirsten is leading a Facebook book club. The book that they're reading right now is called A Danger to Herself and Others, which you can find on Hoopla, which is a resource offered by the library. And Hoopla is awesome because there are no waiting. There's no waiting for any items. You don't have to get in like a request queue to get the items. So she's leading discussions every week, like a comment thread discussion, and every month, and then they're going to have their first video chat on April 27th. And the group, I checked today, already has over 80 members that are involved in it. And this program, again, is kind of like the story times, where it's a very well established program that we do in the library. And so we're seeing people that are new and have never been in a book club before joining it, which is awesome. And we're seeing familiar faces that are in our long-standing book clubs as well. So it's been really great to see those familiar people who are willing to come along with us to a new format. And of course, we haven't stopped issuing library cards. So people have been applying for, and we've been providing via email and mail e-cards, online resource library cards, and getting people connected to ebooks and all of our other online resources. And of course, we're also continuing to circulate online materials. And if you call the library's main line right now, you'll still get an answer. We're taking calls from the public between 10 a.m. and 5 p.m. every day. So if you call, you'll get our circulation supervisor, Amy. And we're also fielding patron inquiries via email and Facebook as well. We've been featured by several media outlets over the last month, which has been great in helping us get the word out about our services in a new format. And I also want to put a plug in to ask for your help to spread the word and share our content and influence your friends and family to share and view our content as well, and help us spread the word. So I guess I'll just end by reiterating it again and saying that it's the full team, not just the folks that I pointed out in the slideshow, the full team that's been doing really good work and really responsive work to the current situation. So they have done an outstanding job. And I also do want to give a shout out to Ellen Rosso, our new communication specialist, who y'all met last month. She put these slides together and has been compiling all of these results and analytics from the work that everybody's doing for WFPL at home, and she's done a great job. So I just want to point that out to all of you as well. So I have a couple other things for the director's report. One thing that I told you that I would be doing is asking you about what finances you would like to see every month and what would be most helpful. And right now, you're getting a lot of different ways of looking at it. You're getting like a full check register, an expenditure report. And so I want to open up the floor and get your feedback and let you guys have a discussion about what might be more useful. And I also know that if you wanted, I can work with the finance department to come up with something else that's higher level if there are specific things that aren't accommodated by any of the reports that you typically get. So yeah, I'm open to your feedback.
So I have to admit that I've been really driving Carissa in this direction. And part of that is just because as a board, I don't think we need to get caught up in the day-to-day operations. For example, at the last meeting, we saw that they bought a coffee pot. Well, I think that should be things that Carissa can manage. And if we see something that's out of line, then we can of course get down into those details. But as a board, I think we do need a higher level. For example, today, I think those graphs and the Excel spreadsheets, I know that that wasn't specifically related to the overall finances, but those were very helpful to see a different view instead of a bunch of numbers on 10 different pages. So one of the things that the percentages I think have been helpful when we can see how much of the budget has been spent, but I don't know that we need to see that as a line item so detailed. And maybe there's no other way to do it. I don't know. Does anybody else have any thoughts? Okay, so Chris, I think from my and please speak up if you think I'm out of line too. That's fine. I think I'll sit for an awkward moment of silence until somebody else pipes up.
I mean, just from my perspective, I would agree with your comments, Alana.
I definitely agree. I feel like what we saw today, I certainly don't feel like we need to see any more. Unless Carissa has a particular challenge or problem. I feel like that's what we're here for, is to provide help and assistance and guidance. But yeah, I mean, are you asking if we should have more or less than what you provided today? Or are you asking if the information we got today is enough? Alana, what were you thinking in terms of guidance for the amount of financial information for each meeting?
I'm not, I think we need a little bit more than what we saw today, but not a lot more.
Okay.
I know I work with my board. I do a profit and loss, and I do an overall balance sheet. And sometimes I do a comparison with a graph just so that we can see where the trends are.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know the exact fit for the library, but I think that Carissa can work with the city to find something that's hopefully less burdensome over time, but probably will be for the next month.
Yeah, and other boards that are larger, you know, then there's one person dedicated to oversight of budget, and then they just kind of provide a report to the larger board, and you know, that's sort of a delegated responsibility, but our board is too small for that. So yeah, I guess my thoughts are in line with yours and Eric's.
Larry, I don't know if you're still with us. I'm operating off of a phone, so I can't see the chat. Has he had any comments? I see that Steve said profit and loss and balance sheet would be, and then it trailed off because I'm working off of a phone. So if somebody else could read his comment, that would be great.
It says profit and loss and balance sheet would be a good start, and then I will let you know if I feel that's not enough for me.
Okay. That's great input, Steve. Thank you. Carissa, do you feel that you have better direction?
Yes, I think that all makes sense, and I think it sounds great. So I'll make it happen.
Did you, Larry had something. Carissa, could you read that?
He says he can't see Steve's comment.
Oh,
So
maybe there's a delay. He'll catch up.
All right, I'll try to talk more for you, Larry.
Above that, he did say, I'm interested in outrageous increases in expenses.
Yes, and I think that that's where the board reserves the fact that they can delve into it deeper. I just don't know that we need to see every expense at this point. Maybe after next month's change, we'll think that it was a horrible decision and we'll go back to what we're doing now. Carissa, did you have anything else to add under the director's report?
I did have a couple other things. I did just want to, Tina already touched on the most important things, but I did just want to outline briefly what the rest of the budget process is going to look like, because all the department heads did get a detailed timeline. So I just want to make sure that you all are filled in on that. So the first step of it is that's already completed is drafting any staffing requests. And then I did that, and then I reviewed those with the library service managers. And so all the department heads did that and sent anything like that to HR and finance and Tina. So that's complete. Finance is requesting that we have a draft of a budget sheet sent to them by next week. So I'm working on that with the library service managers as well. And then what's going to happen in April and May is the department heads are going to workshop with finance and the city administrator and the portfolio holder. So that would be the commission representative. So that'll be Eric. So the department heads will workshop the budget with those folks. And because it looked like on the timeline, we're aiming to have a presentation of the 2021 proposed budget to the commission on July 15th. That means that the board will be should be reviewing a draft of the budget at the May meeting, and then recommending, giving feedback and making any recommendations. And then I would bring back another draft to you in June to actually approve our set of the preliminary budget. And then by July, it would be on track to go to the commission. And then August 4th is the projected date for the commission to approve the preliminary budget. And I can follow up in an email with that too, but I just wanted to give you guys the chance to ask any questions about that and make sure that I outlined that. If there's nothing, the only other thing that I will say right now is that right now we don't have a firm reopen date, and there, things are still changing rapidly. And so we're not in a position where we can make an estimate for the date that the library is going to reopen. But that said, this week I've started working with staff to start crafting a plan for what resuming normal service is going to look like and what it's going to take. Because opening the building back up and resuming our services, it's not going to be like it was the day we closed necessarily. It's going to take time to get everything up and running to that same capacity, and we'll need to consider like a phased approach potentially, where certain departments come back first, maybe even before we're open to the public. Maybe we can have a phased approach to service. Some libraries are already doing that with things like curbside pickup for physical items. So I've engaged all of them to start thinking about what they're going to need and what programming modifications that they've already made right now what of that do they want to continue or think that we should continue going forward, and what notices will need to go out to staff and public, and what the budgetary impact of our closure is going to be. So we're starting to work together ahead of time to make sure that we have an idea for a plan, even though it's uncertain at this point what the reopen date will be. So I just wanted to point that out to you guys to make sure that you knew that we're planning ahead and gonna try to figure out what's most feasible to get us back up and running at 100% eventually. So, and that's all I had for the director's report. Any questions for me?
Okay, we'll move on to other business. I appreciate that other business was put on here. I think I like having an open door that we can discuss things. One of the questions I have, Carissa, is that on the top of our agenda, it says participation, view live on Facebook. Is that how this was displayed?
Yep, that's right. Yep. And then afterwards, the video will be put on the city's YouTube channel.
Excellent. Does anybody else have any other business that they'd like to discuss?
Eric, do you have any thoughts from the city commissioner perspective? Any insights the last 30 days since we last met?
I only caught about half of what you said there, so I'm not sure what the question was.
Just is the city commission being told anything? Any insights on any of this? How is it going from your ties to the city in relation to the library, and how long this could last?
I'm assuming you're referencing our current pandemic in your question. The city is continuing to function, obviously, but with almost everybody working remotely. I mean, obviously, there's certain departments, such as the police department, that have to function in fairly standard format. I apologize for my really rambunctious Labrador in the back that is not happy to be locked up right now. In terms of timeline, I've heard very little. I mean, I've seen information from different models and stuff, but I think that is the $1 million question that if you could answer, everybody would, really love to hear. But it's a big guessing game. So.
And Eric, all the city commission meetings are available online too, correct?
Yeah, our last city commission meeting, we performed, well, there were a few city commissioners in the city chambers, but myself and one other commissioner were connected in via Zoom, and it was very similar to this format. I did not let the dogs be in the room with me at that time, which will be not something I do again, but
Carissa, is it possible for you to be watching that with the commission, and just in case they had any questions about the library?
Yep, I always attend the commission meetings, and I watch them in a virtual format as well. So yes, definitely.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Is there any other business to discuss? Okay, so before we adjourn this meeting, Carissa, when is the next meeting scheduled for?
May 14th, Thursday, May 14th. Yep.
And as of this point in time, we're available via this format for the meeting. Okay, well, if there is no other business, I believe this meeting is adjourned. Thank you for participating, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
have a great night.
Thank you. Keep up the good work, Carissa.
Thanks.